Well, hi, my name is Rob. I'm really glad I could join you for this because I genuinely love evangelism. I love talking about it, but it didn't used to be that way. In fact, I had a really bad example with, I hate to say this to Phil and Jake in the room, but the very thing you're doing, like an evangelism training course, went so wrong for me. I had the worst experience and made me just really not like it. This is a while back, but we had this idea that we would go around and we had this stack of papers, these things called tracks, where you would have these very aggressive questions. And the plan was we hand these out to everybody. So walk around school at lunch while they're eating and just kind of, I felt like I was just interrupting them and just give them the paper. There's no relationship. There's no interaction. Just give the papers. And I remember sitting there just thinking, yeah, I'm never going to do that. That is no way. I was a freshman. Like these people don't know me. They're going to think everything of me. They're going to think the worst things of me. I don't even want to think about the ideas that they would have about me. Hard pass. The good news is that is not the only way for evangelism. In fact, I'd actually say that's probably one of the worst ways you can ever evangelize. But I think a lot of us have these terrible ideas that go through our head when it comes to evangelism. Maybe we feel like we're selling Girl Scout cookies, where we just have to keep going places and we're just trying to get boxes out. Or maybe we think it's about a script, and maybe you think you're supposed to learn the right words to say today, like it's some kind of a script and you go up there and you do a play. It's not like that. We're not selling things. What I want us to talk about today and to start off this whole training is that evangelism is fundamentally an act of love. And that if we think about what does love require me to do in this situation, everything else takes care of itself. If I have love in my heart, the words will flow. The actions will actually come naturally, and I don't have to worry about all these other things. In the book of John, Jesus talks about love. He's about to wash his disciples' feet. It's the last night he has before he's arrested, and he summarizes it in John 13. He says, "A new commandment I give you, that you love one another." I'm assuming it wasn't the first time he told them to love one another, but he's like summarizing everything of all the commandments, all the Bible. Love one another. Just as I loved you, you also are to love one another. And by this, all people will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for each other. So here's Jesus saying, let me boil down all the teachings. Let me boil down everything I've done for you. Love people. Love one another. In fact, they'll know if you're a real follower of Jesus if love is coming out of you, if it flows from you. And so before we ever say a word, before we even think about how we articulate our faith and we gain these skills, which can be helpful, the most important question is a heart check question. Do I have love for this person? If I don't, I need to actually ask God to fill me up with that love, because God certainly loves that person. But do I have love for this person? And if I do, what does love ask of me in this situation? The Bible defines love in different ways. One of my favorite ways is Paul. He writes in the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 13, this church was jacked up. In fact, we're going to read a few verses Paul wrote to this church in Corinth. They got everything wrong. And he's talking about how they're going to be talking, how they're going to work together, all these problems and fighting that they would have amongst each other. And he wants to talk about love. And he tells them that love is patient. It's not feelings. It's not sentimentality. Love is actually patience. Loving is kind. It does not envy, right? You're actually wanting the good for that person. It doesn't boast. I'm not arrogant. I'm not rude. It does not insist on its own way. It's thinking of other people, right? It's putting them as important. It's not irritable. It's not rude. It's not all these other things. And so the Bible tells us very clearly, what is love? It's not some sentimental feeling I have towards my girlfriend or like my wife. Like, love is actually choosing patience with people who try my patience. It's not being self-centered and thinking of what they would want. It's not being boastful. It's not being arrogant. It's trying to build up this other person. That could be a person in your class who's obnoxious and annoying. That could be a friend on the team with you. That could be anything. Love fits all those situations. As a married person, that is still my guiding point for love of how can I be patient? How can I be kind? That's how my wife knows she's loved. And so Jesus tells us, love people. This is the way love is supposed to look. And the reason why this is so important is because we can't fake it. We know how someone feels about us from their actions. The book of Proverbs in chapter 4:23, it says, guard your heart above all else, because from it flow the rivers of life. And so it's the simple idea that your actions, maybe your words, the way you treat people, the things you do, they're going to naturally flow out of you, and they're going to show you what's actually inside of you. Now, this is common sense because we all have emotional intelligence. I always knew which teacher actually liked me. And I don't care what they said, I can tell. Because their actions, their word, their impatience, or their kindness, the small smile on their mouth. I knew Mr. Hesser, he liked me. I wanted to be with him. I wanted to hang out in his classroom at lunchtime. In the same way, I can tell when certain people are pitying me. When certain people are being, they don't want me there, but they're pretending. You can sense this. And so the Bible, that verse is actually warning us, be careful what you put in your heart because it's going to flow out of you in your actions. But the point that it's making is that our actions, the thing that flow from us, needs to come from a good place. And so we see that God, the first source, to be a follower of Jesus is to be like God. And we see that for God, love flows out of him. The most famous verse in the Bible, John 3:16, it says that for God so loved the world, he gave. So the entire good news of Jesus, these actions that we study and we talk about and that we want to share with other people, God's motivation from the very beginning was love, and everything else flowed from there. That's what came out of him. In the book of John, Jesus is walking around different places. It's talking about how busy he is, how tired he is, and these things where he's preaching and he's withdrawing to rest and he's trying to do all these things. But he saw crowds of people, and it says that he had compassion on them because he saw them as being harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Which is funny because in all these stories, it seems like everyone is harassing Jesus. Some of them are trying to trap him in his words. Some of them are trying to do this, or they just need healing. And so they're like, Jesus, can you heal me? Can you heal me? And it feels like they're harassing him, but he actually has such compassion that he sees them as like, where else would they turn? And so Jesus is motivated from love. Every time we read his words, we can see that this idea of what does love require of me, he's doing it every single time. He doesn't pop off and lose his cool. He's acting in love. Even when he says hard words to people, it's motivated from this place of love. Now for us, we want to have that same motivation that Jesus had, right? As we're becoming little Christians, we want to have what Jesus is growing inside of us. And that same messed up church in Corinth, in the book of 2 Corinthians, chapter 5, it starts to talk about a lot of evangelism. And wouldn't it surprise me if later today, someone opens up 2 Corinthians chapter 5. But the first part in verse 14, it has this line where it says, the love of Christ controls us. Another translation is actually the love of God compels us. And then it goes on to talk about the good news and the gospel. But that motivating factor is that I have the love of God, not just flowing to me where I've received and I've been loved by him, but his love, it compels my actions forward. And so the things I do are flowing from this idea of God loves me. And I get to join him in showing other people that he loves them as well. And in fact, as I become more like God, my heart starts to grow, kind of like the Grinch. It grows bigger and bigger, and I start to have the same compassion God has. And eventually, I even start to love my enemies, which is like, I don't like them. They're enemies. Why would I ever love my enemies? And you can start to see them as harassed and helpless as well, just like Jesus. So it says that the love of Christ compels us. Then a few verses later, it says, God is making his appeal through us. Literally, God is using our vocal cords to be the thing that makes the sound of his words, right? We implore you, we beg you on behalf of Christ, be reconciled to God. And so we have this natural flow of love wanting to work through us, and that is resulting in words at times. It's resulting in actions at times. And so this whole idea is that we want to have a heart full of love. I don't want you today to learn evangelism training and to think this is something you have to do. If you do, I actually think check your heart. Like if guilt compels us, it's not going to be received as the actual true gospel of God loving the world. If I'm doing this because I want to make Jake happy or my parents happy, it's not enough. I have to have the love of God as the motivating factor. And then almost everything else you learn today, I actually think it sorts itself out. You can say the words all wrong, and if you have a motivation of love, God can clean that up and God can use that. You can have mistake after mistake, and if you have a motivation of love, you're going to apologize and you're going to get right. And that relational prayer that you do in that moment actually ends up being sometimes stronger than the right actions the first time. God can use it, but we want to come from this place of love. An interesting story. It'd probably be simpler if I just played the YouTube clip for you, but I'm going to tell you about this. So this is like me being a YouTuber as I'm talking about this, and I'm going to say fam and smash the subscribe button. But I'm going to tell you about this clip that we're doing. It's this comedian. His name is Penn. He's from the comedian act Penn and Teller. He's the one who talks. The other one never talks. Anyways, he has this video where he's taking his cell phone and he's kind of just speaking to a phone, and he's in a hotel room, and he talks about this moment where he was walking into his hotel room and there was a person on the street trying to, he says proselytize, but really it's the word evangelize, kind of tell him about Jesus, and kind of the person forces the Bible kind of into his hand, and he's just reflecting in his room. And I would assume, because he openly says, I'm not a follower of Jesus, I don't think that's real, any of that stuff. But he's reflecting on what just happened. And what he says, it's actually astounding. Because he starts talking about how he felt so loved in that moment. Because he says, if you believe what Christians believe, right, that heaven and hell are real, and that the only way to not go to hell is by a relationship with this person named Jesus. That's the way he described it. He said, and if I don't know about him, then I am doomed that way. Then he flips it with this question. He says, how much do I have to hate somebody for me not to tell them that? If I'm standing on a sidewalk and I see a person in the street and they fall over, and I see this semi-truck barreling down the road at them, how much hate do I have to have in my heart to not run over and try to get them out of the way? And he's like, for Christians, if you truly believe this is the way the world is, to not evangelize somebody, it must come from a place of self-preservation or hate, because love makes too much sense. How do you not tell people that the way they can have eternal life is through Jesus? It's an act of love. And so the final thing I want to share with you is kind of this analogy that really worked for me. I think in metaphors and word pictures, and something that really helped me was thinking about music. I played drums most of my life. I love music and I love a good song. And because I'm a drummer, I rarely know the words to songs. I just kind of know like the weird sounds. Some of you guys just got weirded out by that. But when we think about what makes a good song, it's always going to be some kind of combination to like music and lyrics. Now I want you to, the analogy here is the lyrics are the words we say, and our actions, this motivating actions of love, is like the music. If I ask you what your favorite song is, I'm willing to bet It's a song that is not just because the lyrics are incredible, although the best songs have both going for them. But some of the best songs, like, I think of like, I'm older, but like Queen, American, Another One Bites the Dust, like don't, da-dum, da-dum. The song is gibberish. If you actually listen to the words, it's like, who cares? You just say Another One Bites the Dust over and over and yell it. But it's got that rhythm that goes to it. In our life, if I am living as a person who is kind, who is generous, who is not arrogant, who is not self-centered, who is bringing people in, who's not just trying to live for me, but living for others, that's the music of my life. And people are going to groove, and they're going to hear, and they're going to jive, and they're going to want to hear the lyrics that I have to say with this song that I'm living. And so for you, before any of this training keeps moving forward, I want you to have a life that is full of good music. That people would actually hear the kind of the song that you are living, and that song would be compelling because it's actually the song of God. It's a song full of love, of kindness, and then everything that flows from you, people are just drawn towards that because they're drawn towards the God who gave you that same love. Thank you.